with absolutely everything at stake. Meanwhile, the most important player of the weekend is this Eagle. If he doesn't soar, say bye-bye to the Birds on Sunday. And then the 1 seeds are back. We'll tell you why both have significant cause for concern as they commence their collision course for the Super Bowl. All that and more as we get up with you on a Football Friday starting right now. Here we go, we're presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, and we're as ready as you can possibly be. It is the best weekend of the football year. You know who we are? Let's dive right into it. Let's go. Divisional declarations. Oh, and Joe Fortenbaum is here too. Just to slow up my roll. Here we go. Divisional declarations is where it begins on this weekend's games. Yeah. RC, let's take them in the order. You will be there tomorrow. Kansas City, Houston, give me a divisional declaration.
To me, this is the biggest mismatch in all of the playoffs. And I know we're going to look at Detroit and Washington, but when you think about the way that this team has historically played in the playoffs, the Kansas City Chiefs, how Patrick Mahomes executed down the stretch of the season, and the way they found themselves offensively against the Houston Texans, I think it's going to take a yeoman's effort from the Houston Texans offensive line, C.J. Stroud, and turnovers defensively to win this game.
We'll dive into it. Meanwhile, Bart, the second game Saturday. Commanders, Lions, give me a divisional declaration.
Oh, Pop's going to be heavy on the cognac that day. I tell you what, this is the start of something great, because this is the worst that Jaden Daniels is ever going to be. I think he's exceeded expectations.
The worst.
I think he's exceeded expectations. This team is only going to get better, and he can pull off the exceptional, in my opinion. Jaden Daniels is a generational talent. I think he's going to put that on display, and the Lions should be on upset alert, maybe.
Ooh, Graz. Speaking of which, let's go to a divisional declaration for the early game on Sunday, Rams and Eagles.
I'm taking the Rams. I don't feel great about it. I think Matthew Stafford has a big game. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp each go over 100 yards receiving, and the Rams find a way to spring the upset in Philly. I don't know how, but that's what I'm picking.
And that could set up Matthew Stafford in Detroit for the NFC Championship.
Sure could.
Boy, would that be delicious in a week. Meanwhile, speaking of unbelievable matchups, Mike T., it all concludes Sunday night. Give me a divisional declaration for Ravens and Bills.
Greeny, the punter should be deactivated. Jordan Stout, Sam Martin, don't dress for the game. Who's going to tackle Derrick Henry in this weather? They ran for 271 in the first matchup, and on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen at home, he's been unstoppable. I know they struggled running the ball in the first matchup, but you take away the run, the way this Bills offense has improved, to me, it's a high-scoring game with both teams struggled to tackle.
Let's talk about what is at stake in this game, okay? Try and grasp what it is I'm telling you here, because I think this is an incredible statistic. The Buffalo Bills right now are first, and the Baltimore Ravens are second in the Super Bowl era for most wins over any 7-season span without making it to the Super Bowl. So just take that in for a moment. There has never been in the Super Bowl era a team that won more games than the Bills have won over the last 7 years.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
It's a Kansas City Chiefs stat.
It is, but also, too, look at the quarterback of the other team that was up there. It was Peyton Manning.
Right.
A guy we were having these discussions about his greatness as it pertained to, equaling team success when it came to the Super Bowl. And so it shows you that you can still become an all-time great, still win the big game, even starting slowly as a team.
Well, I've made that comparison with Lamar Jackson a million times. I mean, Lamar's got the 2 MVP. He has literally everything except for this. We all know what both these guys are missing. And you put it better than I could, so go ahead. When you define what is at stake for the quarterback.
Yeah, this is a career-defining game before the legacy-defining game. Both of these quarterbacks had the exact same thing at stake. They've both been to AFC championships and lost to Patrick Mahomes. They've both shown you that during the regular season and in the playoffs at times that they could be great. But they haven't gotten the one thing that the best quarterback in football has right now, which is the championship. And so when these two face off, it's not about who's the MVP. It's about who shows up best for their team in that moment. And in winning this game, it gives you an opportunity to face the boogeyman, to face the one player that have kept both of you from reaching a point to where your name becomes immortal. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, you have to beat, at least this year, the other best quarterback in football, and whether that be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen.
So that's the big picture, and we'll spend a lot of time this morning on the big picture. But let's start little picture. Dan Graziano, you are covering this game for us. There are two significant factors. One is Zay Flowers, and the other is the weather. Go.
So Zay Flowers hasn't practiced this week. Missed last week's game with that knee injury. He could get out on the practice field today and be okay, but it doesn't sound very likely that he's going to be able to make it for this game. He's their top receiver. And what was the other thing? The weather?
The weather. I
Yeah.
can give you a graphic to talk over. It's A35.
You don't have to do that.
Tell me what you are anticipating. Poor Dan.
Anticipating being cold.
This is what's going to happen to you. A35, Cindy. Here you go.
Yeah, so that's
not
great.
bad.
The real
not
feel is
great.
-3, Ryan.
That's not bad, though. Dan's
Ideal.
built for that.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I'm not worried about that. But the Ravens are. Look, they haven't been able to practice outside yet this week because their fields are frozen. So it's cold in Baltimore, too. But what John Harbaugh's done is he's brought them in the field house to practice. He's opened all the doors. He's got big fans blowing the cold air in from the outside. I talked to Roquan Smith. He said it got down to 35 in the field house yesterday. So they feel like they're preparing the best they can for it.
Let's talk about both those things. Starting with the weather, does it favor one side or the other?
I don't think so. These are two mentally tough and physically tough teams as well. They believe in running the football. I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to be intimidated by the elements. They have something bigger at stake. They thought last year maybe they let something get by, they were the number 1 seed, and they didn't show up. I think, they're on a mission. They've been on a mission, but also the Buffalo Bills are on a mission. When you talk about playing in cold weather games, the football becomes slick.
Yeah.
It comes about downhill and the willingness to be able to tackle in the third and fourth quarter. Everybody's going to be jacked up on Mountain Dew in the first quarter. Everybody's going to be feeling good. Guys going to be warming up with no shirts on and stuff like that.
Now that's
that
proves
anything.
nothing.
It proves absolutely nothing because those shoulder pads hardened up, and you have to make business decisions if you're willing to go stand on the train tracks when the train is coming through.
I think the weather does make a difference. It favors Buffalo for a few reasons. First of all, they practice and play. It's another day at the office for the Buffalo.
Exactly.
But we've been up there a number of times. That is a unique place to play. And the other thing is, if there's an advantage here, Josh Allen's physicality and arm strength, taking nothing away from Lamar and his season, in these elements, I think it favors Buffalo. And
I think I will say this from the arm strength standpoint. I've always thought to myself that the Buffalo Bills drafted the perfect quarterback for the elements. And I'm gonna say this about the weather, though. I remember the colder it got, the more I felt like I could stand out. Because I felt like no matter how cold it gets, it's going to hurt you more when I hit you than it's going to hurt me. And I wanted to prove that every single snap. And you think that Roquan Smith is going to care how freaking cold it is? And he's going to care that Josh Allen is running the football? Because he's going to say, when I put these pads on him, it's going to hurt him more than it's going to hurt me. This is where the real men stand up. This is where you figure out how bad you want to win championships. And the quarterbacks figure it out, too. Think about Tua Tagovailoa and Patrick Mahomes last year. Patrick Mahomes wasn't tripping on how cold it was. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, it don't matter where you play. Cold is cold. You've been living in New York your whole life. You lived in Chicago. You don't like being cold because you don't like being cold. You don't get used to it. It doesn't matter where you practice. It's about your mindset for those 3 hours. And they got coaches on both of these teams that ain't going to let nobody go out there being soft. And I love this game for that reason. These two dudes, these two teams get to prove it in the worst elements to show what sort of men they are.
How bad do you want it? Right? And I'm talking about, okay, what's the bigger advantage? Josh Allen being tackled by Roquan Smith or Derrick Henry being tackled by a small, undersized defense? I think the advantage favors the Baltimore Ravens because they play a brand and a personnel that is big. Where you talk about the Buffalo Bills, they play nickel package.
Right. No, I agree with that. What's interesting to me is, Sean McDermott plays split safety about 49% of the time. Last game, we know they ran for 271 yards against Buffalo, but this time they have Matt Milano back, Terrell Bernard, Tyron Johnson.
Linebackers.
And that, to me, that's the X factor in this game. How valuable are those linebackers? How much of a difference can they make in this game?
Look, I'm going to play back everything Ryan said, like when I'm getting dressed on Sunday morning. I'm going to be fired up. I'm fired up to go battle the cold. But listen, neither one of these teams cares at all about how cold it's going to be. They both have much bigger things in mind. The Ravens still remember how last year ended. They're talking about how this year's different. They've been through adversity and come out the other side, and they're fired up. The Bills are pissed off that Josh Allen's not going to win MVP. Like when that All-Pro team came out last week and it was Lamar Jackson first team, like that made them mad. I was talking to Spencer Brown, their right tackle, and he said, yeah, we noticed that. He said, this is the matchup everybody wanted. They're going to get it. So, and then he stopped talking and he said, nah, I'm not going to go any further than that. You'll see.
But isn't
okay.
that, I think, though, that's going to be the conversation in these locker rooms because that doesn't matter. And let's be real. Yeah. Winning this game is the MVP. Right? If Josh Allen is sitting at home and wins the MVP and Lamar Jackson is playing in the Super Bowl, everybody from Baltimore, everybody around the world is going to say, we really don't care because when it was time to be the MVP, Lamar Jackson was, and vice versa. And so it's going to be about how they go out and perform in this game. And I got news for you. It's actually not just all about them.
Right.
That's what's going to be great about this game on Sunday evening is the fact that the run game's going to have to step up. The defense is going to have to step up. Sean McDermott's going to have to be the best Sean McDermott. John Harbaugh is going to have to be the best John Harbaugh. These are two great football teams.
And to put a ribbon on this discussion, the winner of this game Sunday night has to then go to Kansas City, presumably, and that's why that stat is so compelling.
The winner of this game,
collateral damage.
The winner of this game is going to be the favorite to win the next round.
Ooh, at Kansas City, I don't see that.
Maybe not in Vegas, but in your mind.
Yes.
You will take them. You will expect them to go and beat Mahomes.
Well, this division, you talk about what's the physical toll that's going to be put on both of these two teams.
That's right.
What's left to face the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
Speaking of Vegas, we have Joe Fortenbaugh all morning long.
Wait.
Our betting expert all morning long.
He's
got his best bets, and we'll hear them all day. And he and I will go head-to-head a little bit later today with Greeny versus Joe. But what is your best bet on Ravens-Bills?
Lamar Jackson's rushing prop here, Greeny, 49.5 yards. We're playing that over. Go back to last year's AFC Championship game against Kansas City. Baltimore drops back to pass on 14 of their first 21 offensive plays. A disastrous approach that had disastrous results. This year, if the Ravens go down, they're going out on their own shield. Here's why. Last week against Pittsburgh, Lamar Jackson carried the ball 15 times. The most we've seen him run the ball since week 1 against Kansas City. That is a message to everyone that, again, if they're going out on their own shield. 55 rushing yards per game this season. In the first meeting against Buffalo, 54 yards on just 6 carries. I expect double-digit carries here. I expect them to go over 49.5 rushing yards.
Joe will have his best bets all morning long. We're just getting started on a Football Friday. Coming up, the truth hurts. If the Rams shut down Saquon, can the Eagles quarterback win this game with his arm? At least one member of our crew has his doubts. Plus, the one seeds are back. We'll tell you why both have significant cause for concern as they commence a collision course for the Super Bowl. All that is on the way. It's Get Up on ESPN. Happy belated anniversary, Bart Scott, 14 years ago yesterday.
It looks like this team played with anger all day. Why, Bart? For all you non-believers, disrespect us, talk crap about the defense like we ain't the third best defense in the league. All we hear is about their defense. They can't stop a nosebleed. 25th in the league, and we don't want to get disrespected. Congratulations. See you in Pittsburgh. Can't wait.
Pittsburgh wasn't too inviting to me. Pittsburgh was not that inviting to me.
What's that?
Pittsburgh wasn't too inviting to me. You're a hobo horse.
Hey, bro. That was epic. Still to this day, Bart Scott, that is.
Oh, man.
That's the reason you're on TV. You can play, but you're on TV because of that.
By the way, that's the last playoff game the Jets won.
Wow.
To this day.
You really brought the mood down.
All right. On we go. Let's talk about playoff teams.
This guy's awful.
The game is either or. Bartholomew, let's go to Rams-Eagles. Who has more passing yards in this game, Matt Stafford or Jalen Hurts?
I think it's Matthew Stafford. If you want to power rank all the best quarterbacks left in the playoffs, I think Matthew Stafford would be, close to number one. He's a Super Bowl champion. He understands how to move the football. I think he has tremendous experience, and he has two great guys on the outside, man. It's Sean McVay. I think he figures it out. If the Philadelphia Eagles win, it's going to be on the legs of Saquon.
Let's go to receivers. Mike T, more receiving yards in the Commanders and Lions. Scary Terry or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Greeny, Terry McLaurin, 2 reasons. One, Jaden Daniels right now, not in 10 minutes, not in a year, is a bona fide superstar.
Yeah.
But the other reason is I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Goff is just going to distribute the ball. And I think Washington tries to take St. Brown out of the game, and therefore other people will get the production.
All right, then Graz, how about more passing touchdowns in Kansas City, Stroud or Mahomes?
Mahomes. Like it's Mahomes. I mean, he had last week off. It's the Chiefs. I mean, the divisional round is Mahomes' round to dominate. Yeah, Mahomes. That's all I got to say.
I will give you a number on him in a minute that will demonstrate just how ridiculously unstoppable he has been in this round. In fact, let's do it, Cindy. Let's just put it up there. B26. Let's just set the table. RC told us that there would be no bigger surprise to him in the playoffs than Houston winning this weekend. Patrick Mahomes has the most wins without a loss by any quarterback in any playoff round in NFL history. And in these 6 wins, he has 13 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And making it worse for Houston. Sneaky, this is not sneaky big news. Yeah. This is sneaky huge news. What happened at practice this week?
Joe Mixon, their running back, injured his ankle in practice on Wednesday. Did not practice yesterday and officially listed as questionable for tomorrow's game. So there is a chance, and they're not ruling him out, obviously, but there is a chance that they don't have Joe Mixon for this game against the Chiefs.
Now that's
catastrophic.
That's devastating, right?
I mean, he's the heartbeat. He's the one guy that sets the table. He sets them in second and short and third and manageable. It was him last week that set the tone and changed the way the game was going with his legs last week.
Greedy, I see this differently. I think Kansas City wins, but I think Patrick Mahomes is bruised and battered. You look at that Houston front seven, they could rush the passer, and all year long, what have we talked about? Chiefs offensive line. And to me, this is like a boxing match where Patrick Mahomes is standing there victorious, but he's going to be cut and he's going to be bruised. This is going to be a tougher game than people realize.
I mean, you go back to the first time these two teams met. That was the week Hollywood Brown returned, and we had so many bunches and stacks where Patrick Mahomes was getting the football out of his hands quickly. And I believe you'll do that again, especially the way Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley are playing the cornerback position for the Houston Texans. But let's be real. The Kansas City Chiefs are different in the playoffs. The Kansas City Chiefs stepped their game up. This is where we saw Travis Kelce become Travis Kelce again last year. Xavier Worthy has found his place, and we're talking about DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud that have been amazing in turning this organization around in their first 2 years. But them dudes, right? Like, they one of them ones, and they are the only ones when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. And to expect the Houston Texans to go into the Arrowhead Invitational, because that's all it is every year in the AFC, and win this game, that's a tall task for any team.
It's odd because, like, we haven't seen the Chiefs really since Christmas, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the Texans have played, 2 or 3 games, right? And so we forget sometimes. And I do think that if you didn't know anything about the season and you just played back clips of Mike Tannenbaum talking here every Friday morning throughout the season, you'd think the Chiefs missed the playoffs. Yeah, because they don't.
I'm glad somebody was listening.
Right, so like they find a way. Andy Reid coming off a bye. We all know how incredible that record is. Patrick Mahomes knows how to win this round. Houston's live, but the defense is awesome. They were great last week. It's just, to me, the arrested Chiefs team is just.
I am not predicting an upset, but that 45-3 loss and what Bart's clip. Defense has to travel to have road success in the playoffs. Yeah. Houston has a very good defense.
They do.
I think this game's way closer than we think.
What makes it so hard to stop Patrick Mahomes is you never know who's going to eat that day. Right, mm-hmm. That's the problem. See, it's almost better when he had Tyreek Hill because you knew that you can create a defense that stops it. But will it be DeAndre Hopkins that makes one pivotal catch? Will it be Hollywood Brown? Will it be some gadget from Xavier Worthy that when they get in the red zone, you don't prepare for it?
And we saw that.
Yeah, they do some spinning temptations formation. You're like, what the hell is this? You figured out on Monday.
Yeah, Pacheco's had a few weeks now to maybe get a little healthier than he was the last time we saw him. We're
having all of these conversations, not talking about the strength of the Kansas City Chiefs, which is their defense. Right. Steve Spagnuolo, the way that he can dial up and disguise some of those simulated pressures and zone pressures against an offensive line that allows the most free rushers in football could be diabolical.
Without Tank Dell.
Jalen Watson, the cornerback, back this week. So that helps.
Get Johnson off the field, who's a complete liability.
We shouldn't even play the game, huh?
We shouldn't.
Well, let's find out what Joe thinks, because it's one thing to think the Chiefs are going to win. It's another the thing to think they're going to blow the Texans out. The Chiefs very seldom blow anybody out. What's your best bet?
Playing Houston plus the points looked good until the Mixon injury, so maybe we shuffle that to the side for now, but we do attack the angle of going under 41.5 total points. This has rock fight written all over it. How much can you possibly trust the Houston offense at this point in the season? Shaky O-line, no Tank Dell, and now the Joe Mixon injury. This is a team that in 3 games since the Tank Dell injury, just 13 offensive points per game. That's it. However, Mike T was just talking about it. The Texans defense can generate pressure with their front 4. They can get after a susceptible Kansas City offensive line. And with Derek Stingley leading them in the back end, they can limit, not stop, limit Kansas City on offense, keeping this game under 41.5 points.
You will see it tomorrow right here on ESPN and ABC. That's our game, 4:30 Eastern time. We got Stroud, we got Mahomes, we got the Texans and the Chiefs. It's on ABC, ESPN, ESPN Deportes, ESPN Plus. Ryan Clark and company will have postseason NFL countdown starting 2 Eastern on ESPN. Coming up, the most important player of the weekend is this Eagle. If Saquon doesn't soar, will we be saying bye-bye to the Birds on Sunday? Plus, Jayden in command. Can he go into the Lions' den and beat Detroit? What if he pulls off what would be the biggest upset of the playoffs? What then? We'll answer that question and more next. Let's get up on ESPN. Presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook as we continue racing through a fabulous 4 games this weekend. And I'm told we have Ryan Clark's Game Breakers ready to go. Okay, RC, let's talk about 4 players who could decide this weekend's games. And let's start with the Sunday night matchup, Ravens and Bills.
Yeah, with the Sunday night matchup, I know it's not sexy, but Mark Andrews, think about the way that they're going to utilize big people on the field. There's going to be a ton of time where there's going to be Lamar Jackson and then 10 other people that are 250-plus pounds. And so that's going to put a linebacker on Mark Andrews, and we know how big he's been in the red zone, the way he's leading this team in touchdown catches, and he's Lamar Jackson's not security blanket, but go-to guy. So I'm expecting Mark Andrews to have a huge day. It's going to be cold. You're going to want to throw in between the numbers. You're going to want to keep big people on the field.
Let's go to the early game tomorrow. You will be there for Kansas City and Houston. Who's the game breaker?
I mean, when you think about Kansas City and Houston, we have to get Nico Collins involved. The last time they played, Trent McDuffie traveled with him, so he wasn't able to get loose. McDuffie held him to like 3 catches and only 5 yards. He has to get going the same way he got going against the Los Angeles Chargers last week. That infused this offense with some energy, and then later on, Joe Mixon was able to take over.
Commanders and Lions is the Saturday night special.
It's going to be all about Jahmyr Gibbs to me. They have to stop the run. You got to find a way to try to make the Detroit Lions one-dimensional. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Deron Payne up front. You have to be stout in the run game because the play action from Ben Johnson and Jared Goff will kill you if you allow Jahmyr Gibbs to get going. And it's the speed, Greeny, taking a 5-yard run and making it 20 in 6 points.
Well, he's Sonic and he's getting knuckles back too, right?
Yeah, so which is the worst case scenario for the Washington Commanders this week.
And finally, Rams and Eagles. Who's the player to watch?
I mean, when you think about the Rams, it's going to be how can they utilize Kyren Williams? Kyren Williams is a guy who I believe is underrated in this league, a big-time rusher from the backfield, but they also use him in the pass game. It's going to be about ball control in this game. You know that Saquon Barkley will be huge on the other side of the ball for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I believe Kyren Williams is just as important.
Well, those are the 2 backs in this game, obviously. Williams on one side, and let's talk about Saquon because he went crazy the last time these teams played each other, had over 300 yards from scrimmage. But if history is any guide, Sean McVay is going to give him a tough time. Take a look at the numbers. Saquon is going up against the Sean McVay team that in the 12 career playoff games that McVay has coached, he has never allowed, a 100-yard rusher. There it is. 12 playoff games. No one has ever run for 100 yards against the Sean McVay team. And as Dan Orlovsky told us yesterday, that magic number will decide the game.
If Saquon doesn't go over 100, the Rams win this game. It'll be very clear. Jalen Hurts has got 6 playoff games, right?
Yeah.
In those 3 wins, he's thrown for 154 yards, 131 yards, and 121 yards. In the 3 losses, he's thrown for 304 yards, 250 yards, and something like 230 yards. So it's very clear.
The formula.
When they win, it is not on the arm of Jalen Hurts.
Okay, so, I mean, it's easier said than done if they stop Saquon Barkley. Well, no one has stopped Saquon Barkley, but let me ask my linebacker friend here.
Yeah, man.
If that's what... If the Rams decide we're putting, as you said in our meeting this morning, 11 guys in the box, is Jalen Hurts ready to go out and beat him?
I think it makes the game a game. I think because Jalen Hurts, he's risk averse. Like, he doesn't want to put the ball in harm's way. He's... we talked about him not pushing the ball downfield, not giving his all-star wide receivers opportunities at the ball. You watch every other quarterback that has guys that we consider that dude, and A.J. Brown is that dude. And they give those guys chances to win. And if he isn't willing to put the ball in harm's way, then I don't know if they can win a Super Bowl. This game, we'll see if Saquon Barkley can go crazy. When somebody runs for 255 yards, I don't know if you got a game plan that you can stop or the personnel.
We got to stop using risk averse like it's leprosy.
It's not.
Right? Like, you know who was risk averse? Me. I didn't have a financial advisor until my 4th year in the league because I was undrafted. I was basically putting my money underneath my mattress. And when I got one, I said, hey, man, don't you do nothing dangerous. I was like, I don't care how much money I make, but I sure don't want to lose none. And you're seeing that Jalen Hurts was playing that way because you had Saquon Barkley, because you could still win games playing that way. But when I hear Dan read some of those playoff stats, you know what it says to me? That means Jalen Hurts is capable. Right. He's capable of producing. And in order to stop Saquon Barkley, what is Chris Shula, the defense coordinator, going to have to do? He's going to have to sell out. So that means you're going to tell me you're going to have Kobe Durant outside one-on-one against Devontae, right? Or you're going to have him one-on-one against A.J. Brown. You don't want that. Because now those 50-50 balls become 75-25 balls, 90-10 balls. And Jalen Hurts can absolutely win a football game if he has to, based on what it's going to take to stop Saquon Barkley.
I think physics takes over, guys. Saquon Barkley led the NFL 2.64 yards before contact, Green. The best in the NFL. If these two teams played 10 times, Saquon rushes for 100 yards 9 out of those 10 times. It's just one of these matchups that a team's strength is the other team's weakness.
And honestly, that one time, he must go pull a hamstring.
They can't stop him. You're saying they can't stop him.
No, you can't stop him.
You can't stop.
You can stop anybody.
If he rushes for 100 yards, that's a win for the Rams.
Right.
He had 255. Right. And I'm pretty sure 140 of them came on 2 carries, right? So that's the trick. Is finding a way to limit the explosive game-wrecking run that he has, especially in the second half when they're trying to put games away. Again, easier said than done.
And if we wanted to nerd out, I'm sure me and Ryan can show guys what fronts that gives you a better chance. They can go to a reduced front. It's certain things that you can do, but you can't get in a heavy dose of being predictable. So you have to be able to stop the run and load the box in different ways.
Let me ask you a different question. I'm just going to paraphrase it, but Harry Douglas was sitting in that seat yesterday, and of course he's a wide receiver. We all understand how wide receivers think. But he said there is no game in which A.J. Brown should ever have 1 catch for 10 yards and 3 targets.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of the circumstances. And now, he's reading a book, which either is or isn't a big deal. I can't make up my mind.
Good for that
all week long.
Big week.
Worked out pretty well for him. I keep telling Hembo, send our books to the Eagles. For crying out loud.
But inner excellence is the name of the book. Right. We need some outer excellence from A.J. Brown and the Eagles passing game if they're going to have playoff success. I'm not kidding. I mean, they're going to have to do something at some point.
Harry's right. Coach Parcells would always say, in consequential moments, it's players, not plays. And A.J. Brown does need to touch the ball more than once per game.
Well, I hear Tom Brady on these telecasts every single week and all the interviews that he does, and he's always saying, when you've got receivers, you want to get them a touch early. Get them into the game.
They would check out.
That's what I mean.
They would check out.
Good for him that he's sitting there reading a book. I mean, as opposed to yelling at people and saying, throw me the damn ball. I'm surprised he's not reading Keyshawn's book.
That's also on Kellen Moore, right? Because think about when we watch Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals play, the throws behind the line of scrimmage where they have blockers out in front, or the quick out from the slot position. It's not necessarily that they're throwing him these big explosive plays or giving him opportunities to be dynamic. It's just giving him a chance to touch it. Right. And so if you're Kellen Moore, you have to dial some of those things up. If we get off coverage in cover 3, throw the hitch.
Yeah.
Give him a 5-yard stop. He'll catch it. He'll turn around and run.
That's a run.
Maybe he gets 8 yards. Maybe he gets 15. But at least he feels like he's involved.
In games like this, too, you want your receivers comfortable with how the ball feels that day, right? Because you don't want it to be a gotta-have catch, and he decides, do I try and hand catch it, or do I catch it off those frozen shoulder pads, and then you don't make the play. You want him to get a touch and see how the ball feels.
And also, too, I know, Mike, he has something. in A.J. Brown, to give A.J. Brown credit, the Dallas Goedert touchdown is partly because A.J. Brown throws a block on Dallas Goedert's man who is covering him. And that's huge because he stayed involved and did other things other than catch the ball.
Grady, what's interesting to me about this game is Sean McVay, the strategist, he knows these matchups. I'm sure he's going into this game saying, screw it. 4-down football, Stafford. We're just going to go. Our best chance to win is when we have the ball because we can't stop this team. And like Graz said, 100 yards is a win for the Rams. So if there's an upset in this game, it's going to be on the right arm.
Here's the problem. I hear you.
You can lose early.
The Eagles' defense is the best. I mean, they're probably the best unit on the field this whole weekend.
If the Rams win this game, it is going to be the most masterful coaching performance of Sean McVay's life. We're going to come in here and we're going to talk about the way that Sean McVay out-strategized, and made better decisions than Nick Sirianni. That's what it's going to be about. The way Chris Shula played defense against the Eagles, the way Sean McVay made sure the offense complemented them, the opportunities they took to go for it on 4th down to keep the ball away from Jalen Hurts. It's all going to be about the way they coach and the way that number 9 plays.
That's what I love about this round. Because it's rematches, right? So you use what they know about you against you, right? It's all about knowing your tendencies and changing your tendencies in pivotal moments. It's about, can you pick up that 4th down, right? When we talk about when we played New England, they expected us to be man-to-man all the time. What we did is we simulated man-to-man. We went with them in motion, but it was a zone, and it depended on where you end up. It's masterful, and this is when you separate the coaches, the good from the great in this round.
Yeah.
I see one Los Angeles Rams logo on my screen. That's one more than I was expecting. Look, you give them a chance.
Look at his suit jacket.
Coach and quarterback.
Frostbite.
Coach and quarterback. I think they have an advantage in those two key spots. And look, the first game they got run all over by Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. That's bad, but it's also a whole pile of data for Sean McVay and his staff to sift through and figure out what to do differently this time. They're good
Ball, let's do the NFC games. Best bet. Let's start with Rams and Eagles. What is your best bet in this game?
A.J. Brown under 69.5 receiving yards. I love the fact that you guys have spent all week talking about A.J. Brown reading a book on the sidelines because it means no one's talking about the fact that A.J. Brown didn't look particularly healthy in that matchup last week. 3 targets, 1 reception, didn't create a whole lot of separation, and his quarterback didn't look right either. Jalen Hurts holding on to the ball too long, tentative to throw it over the middle. For 2 teams that want to run the ball in this game, the opportunities are going to be limited, and for a guy averaging 77 receiving yards per game, prop of 69.5, we'll play the under there.
So you're suggesting he's going to be reading more than the defense in this game once again. The other NFC game, Lions-Commanders in Detroit. What's your best bet?
Step number 1, get yourself some Pepto-Bismol, because this one's going to be uncomfortable. Under 55.5 total points. Highest total in the playoffs since 2020. You need a lot to go right in order to get a total to go over 55 points. Not just a lot of scoring, you need to score quick. And these 2 teams don't necessarily do that. 2 of the most methodical offenses in the NFL. They take their time matriculating the ball down the field. Washington's coming in hot. I wonder what they're going to do against the Detroit defense. Banged up, but Anzalone's back. 2 weeks to prepare. Maybe the crowd noise has an effect. We don't need to stop Washington. We just need to limit them a little bit to keep it under 55.5.
I think I'm going to go. I think I have the over a little. We're going to do Greeny versus Joe a little bit later. We'll explain.
You sat there, you listened to all of it, you spit in the face of it.
No, I'm sat there, I listened to all of it, and I'm questioning myself is what's happening here. As we continue to the coaching carousel, is it Dion or bust in Big D? Is Jerry setting the Cowboys up for failure? We'll dive into that too. Oh, what a weekend we're looking at. It's Get Up on ESPN.
So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking
about our honeymoon.
What about Africa? Safari.
Hot air balloon rides.
Swim with elephants.
Wait, can we afford a safari?
Great question. Like everything, takes a little planning.
Or put the money towards a down payment
On a ranch
in Montana.
with horses.
Let's take a look at those scenarios.
JP Morgan Wealth Management has advisors in Chase branches and tools like Wealth Plan to help keep you on track. When you're planning for it all, the answer is JP Morgan Wealth.
For NFL games this weekend, we also have 6, Dan Graziano, head coaching openings in the NFL. Let's run through those.
Why are you asking me with Tannenbaum? Anyway, we got the Bears. Let's talk about the Bears. Mike McCarthy was in there earlier this week, former Cowboys coach. Bears flew him in, interviewed him in person. He stayed overnight. A legitimate candidate there in Chicago. They are interviewing a lot of people, but the fact that he was able to get in front of them and be there in person, I think you have to stamp him as a legitimate candidate for the job. We'll keep an eye on that. Still in its early stages is the Bears coaching search. Not as early as the Cowboys. I'm sorry, we got the Raiders. The Raiders have been talking to Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. He's high on their list of candidates from what I've been told. Tom Brady, you see here, he's a minority owner in the Raiders. He's been involved in the interview process. He is said to be a big fan of Ben Johnson and trying to push hard to see if they can make that hire happen. They're also looking for a general manager in Las Vegas, but keep an eye on Ben Johnson if you're wondering where he may end up. The Raiders, a legitimate possibility. And then there is the Dallas Cowboys. We know this is Deion Sanders. Jerry Jones talked to Deion Sanders earlier this week about possibly coaching the Cowboys. Where that ends up is really anybody's guess at this point. They are interviewing Kellen Moore, the Eagles offensive coordinator, virtually today. They have an interview set up this weekend with former Jets head coach Robert Saleh. Leslie Frazier is on their list. Liam Cohen is on their list. But Greeny, I know you want to talk about this guy, Deion Sanders, who is apparently on the list as far as Jerry Jones is concerned, and we'll see where that ends up landing.
I want to hear Stephen A. talk about it. Yesterday, Stephen A., for those of you who missed it, opened First Take with a message for Jerry Jones.
Howdy! How do you do? Yes, I'm in someplace other than Dallas, Texas, but it's on a lot of people's minds, because I heard my boy Prime Time is snowmobiling in the mountains. Let me tell you something, baby. It don't matter whether you got on a cowboy hat, whether you're snowboarding, or whatever the case may be. When Prime Time is making news and it's associated with the Dallas Cowboys, you know what you got to say to yourself? Come on, Jerry, get it together. The playoffs are going on without you. Come on, Jerry, you know you need a new man in that building. Get it together. Come on, Jerry, do what the people are clamoring for you to do, because when you do that, you can end up someplace like this, even with a cowboy hat on, you hear?
Okay, Stephen A., performance arts extraordinaire. So there's so many pieces to this. And the most interesting one of it, and Mike Tannenbaum, all kidding aside, I mean, anyone who's paying attention is aware you're assisting the Jets with their head coaching search. At the end of the day, these things come down to one person making a decision, right? So it's not about whether we think it makes sense, all that kind of stuff. It's going to come down to Jerry Jones deciding, does he like the idea or not?
It's not about whether anyone else in the Dallas Cowboys facility thinks it makes sense. It's up to Jerry Jones. Look, I continue to think this is not the likely outcome, right? Like a lot has to happen. Deion at Colorado, you know, he's got some roots down there and has done well. But the fact that they've talked is not insignificant. It is Jerry that's going to make this decision. He could theoretically sell Deion on this opportunity and get him out of Colorado. So the thing people have to understand is if you go back a week and you ask Jerry Jones who the coach of the Cowboys is going to be next year, he would have said Mike McCarthy. Like this, they thought they would get a deal done with McCarthy. They didn't. So their search couldn't begin until early this week. And as of now, this is part of it.
Yeah, I agree. This time of year, you hear words like fit and alignment. It's very unique there. It's an owner who's a GM who has a post-game press conference, a radio hit every week. So it has to be a fit for that culture and that situation. In some ways, you feel like these two guys would fit together. And if it's ever going to happen, now would be the time.
I mean, this would be strictly a football. This isn't about selling tickets or back pages. Deion Sanders is a legitimate football coach who has proven himself at everything he's ever done.
You know him. I mean,
he was a teammate of mine for 2 years. Listen, people don't get confused with thinking Deion is like, you know, some new school type of guy. He's an old school principle guy. And what does the Dallas Cowboys need? Accountability. They've been living off of those, you know, those 3 titles that they had in the 90s. Well, who better to come in than a guy that was part of that building process to help them get one of them chips? He can come in and he's one of the very few players that can get the ear of the audience, and he can call guys out. And what could you say? If you want to build brands, that's who you talk to. He can be a resource for everybody in that locker room and everybody within that building.
Well, I think it's 2 different jobs that head coaches in Dallas have to do. You have to be able to manage the locker room, and you have to be able to manage the owner. And I think that Deion Sanders can do that. It's not necessarily just about the X's and O's. Obviously, he knows and understands how to build a program. When you look at Jackson State, and also Colorado. But for Jerry Jones and Deion, it's having a voice that you value and respect. Someone needs to be able to have a conversation with Jerry, because you're never going to tell Jerry what to do, that Jerry, this could be best for our team, and have him value that. And now when you look at a CeeDee Lamb, go back to last year when Dan and we're talking about the tours. Who better to say, okay, here is how you handle what it is to be a Dallas Cowboy better than primetime Deion Sanders.
Right.
The thing about these two men, there's no room that Deion Sanders is in where he's not the brightest light. There's no room that Jerry Jones is in where he's not the brightest light. How do they figure out a way to compromise when it comes to who is the biggest voice in this locker room? And I think that's what's most important.
I think the other part of this, you just made me think of it. You know, Micah Parsons with all the podcasts. I mean, the Cowboys have far more podcasts than they have wins, you know, in this past year anyway. Like, I think that's the kind of thing, to your point, that Deion might be the one player or one of a very small handful of people who could walk into a room and say, guys, we're done with that.
No, he can't. Deion has a Tubi show right now. So, like, that's not going to happen. But the thing is, the thing that he won't do, though, he won't tell them not to have them, but he will tell them, do your job with excellence while having them. There's so many. This is a new age of players.
Probably can help him do it.
Yeah, it's a new age of players. So now Deion can go to them and say, okay, it's okay that we have these things. I understand these things, but Micah, what you can't say is this. What you can't do is this. You can't put us in this situation. I want you to shine, but shine in the right way.
That's the way I should have said it. Yeah. Don't rank the best quarterbacks in the NFL and leave our guy out.
Yeah.
Don't do that on your podcast. NBA doubleheader coming your way tonight. We will have Jason Tatum and the Celtics hosting the Magic. That's at 7 Eastern. Then John Morant and the Grizzlies taking on the Big Baguette, Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs. NBA Countdown starts our coverage at 6:30 Eastern. Coming up, the countdown is on for Lamar versus Josh with everything at stake. But we'll tell you why this showdown will come down to another, even bigger star. That's on the way. Get up on ESPN.